Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. I have every reason to stand on his promises. Joshua 23, verse 14. Behold, this day I am going the way of all the earth, and you know in all your hearts and in all your souls that not one thing has failed of all the good things which the Lord your God spoke concerning you. All have come to pass for you. Not one word of them has failed. Genesis 9, verse 11. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Hebrews 10, verse 23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. When I was growing up, there was a disturbing proverb that caused me to lose confidence in people for a while. It simply said, a promise is a comfort to a fool. Sadly, there have been a few instances when I was promised something only to be made out to be a fool, because not only was the promise not kept, but in hindsight, there were signs that the person who made the promise was not sincere. Some people make promises with the best of intention, but when they are unable to deliver on their promises, they will do the honorable thing and apologize. Others give excuses, and still others just keep revising the promise and prolonging the inevitable. The promise would never come true. Mankind has heard hundreds and hundreds of promises from God. Surely enough, if God makes a promise, you expect him to keep his word, right? Nobody in their right mind would doubt that God can keep his promise. I'm sure that some people doubt God for several reasons, but God makes a case for himself that he is a promise keeper. In Genesis, we read the epic account of how God was upset with the sinfulness of humans, and he saved Noah and his family because they were righteous people. Well, God released his disappointment or unleashed his disappointment by destroying the earth by flood. The human population, the animal population, the earth was completely destroyed by 40 days and 40 nights of non-stop rain. After Noah and his family and the animals which were saved came out of the ark, God and Noah had a conversation. And it is in that conversation we learn something crucial about God and promises. God made a promise to Noah and future generations of human beings and every living creature. The promise stated that God was making a forever promise to Noah. God said, never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. To seal his promise, God told Noah that whenever a rainbow appears in the sky, it will be a reminder to God that the world will never again be destroyed by water. God treats promises as covenants, and covenants are not broken. Then we come to the second text. Joshua had led the Jewish people into the promised land and continued to lead them through fightings and skirmishes with the natives. Joshua had reached a ripe old age and was getting ready to demit office when he called the population to make a speech. It is in that speech that Joshua defended God as a promise-keeping God. Joshua boldly said that there is not one promise that God has made to his people that has not been kept. In reality, Joshua said it was a foregone conclusion that God keeps and has kept his promises to his people. Joshua was certain that there was no one who could refute that statement about God, because God is a promise keeper. There are some good promises, and there are evidences that God keeps his promises. In Genesis, we read how God called a pagan named Abram and his young beautiful wife Sarai to leave his country and go where God was going to lead them. God said to them he was going to lead them to this country that was naturally prosperous and that would become their permanent home. Well, what happened? It took over 450 years before the promise to the Jewish people of a promised land came true. By that time, Abraham and Sarah did not have the promised son until age 100 and age 90, respectively. Abraham and Sarah died before the bigger promise of the promised land was kept, but they died in confidence, knowing that God would keep his promise. Then there was a king in Judah named Jehoshaphat. One day he got a message that a combined army of 3 enemy nations was coming to decimate his country. The king prayed and fasted and begged God to spare them from this military attack. While he was waiting for a response from God, a prophet came and told him that God had promised that they would win the war without fighting the enemy forces. God would fight for them. Well, the next day they went to battle, and the enemy's army was defeated just as God had promised, without Jehoshaphat's army firing one arrow or throwing one spear. Finally, when Adam and Eve sinned, God came and made a promise and pronounced some curses on them. But the big promise that God made was that one day a descendant of the woman would crush Satan's head and Satan would bruise his heel. Thousands of years later, the Bible gave a beautiful description. When the right time came, God sent his son as was promised to redeem mankind. God is a promise keeper. Do you have a promise that God has made to you? Or is there a promise or some promises from the Bible that you have claimed for yourself? Well, my friend, God has not failed to keep his promise to you. And he is not a human that he would forget his promise or he's unable to deliver. God is all powerful and all knowing, and he cannot fail to keep his promise. God simply will deliver his promise at the right time. Sometimes it seems like forever, and sometimes you get the impression that God has forgot. But that will never ever happen. He's a promise keeper. What he promises will come true. You have every reason to stand on the promises of God.